Welcome, friends. Today's Dvar Torah is dedicated in honor of my dear friend David Yisrael Issa ben Devorah Chena. Please God, he should have a Yeshua B'Karov Mamash. Now, I want to share with you a fascinating insight and a profound idea, which is at the beginning of this week's Parsha. And I'll start by asking a question. You know, the story you're all familiar with. Abraham found himself sitting at the entranceway to his tent after having performed bris milah, and he's pained by the fact that he doesn't have any guests. He loved performing hospitality. And eventually God decides to send him 3 angels in the guise of men in order for him to be able to perform this mitzvah. So he sends the 3, and we're told by our sages that each one was tasked with a very specific mission. The first one was there to heal Abraham after bris milah. That we understand. The second one came to bring Sarah and Abraham the good tidings and news that they were going to be blessed in a year's time with the birth of a son. After all these years of waiting, they would have a future, they would have a progeny. We understand. The third one, we are told, came to destroy the city of Sodom. The city of Sodom? So the question's obvious. Why come? You're in the wrong address. Why are you coming to Abraham? Go straight to Sodom and destroy the city. Carry out your task, your mission. You've got no business by Abraham. What's the answer? So many years ago, there were the Briscoe brothers, they were called. Not the wrestlers, the other Briscoe brothers. Their names were Tyrone and McKinley. And they grew up in the southwest of Washington, a very rough, deprived, poor neighborhood. And they didn't know their fathers. Their mother lived from one welfare check to the other. They were living in in what was called the sweat box, which was a very, very rough apartment block. And they both shared a common vision in that they were determined not to have to live this hand-to-mouth existence that they'd seen by their mother, always going without. Rather, they were determined to pull themselves out of this poverty trap and to be able to live a better life for themselves and for their families. But they had very different visions as to how to reach it. So McKinley, at 15 years old, whilst he was already still in school, he worked round the clock, doing odd jobs after school in order to be able to make some money. And by 22, McKinley was already working at the Army Medical School. And in addition to that, he at nights worked as a bowling attendant. He worked day and night and still does in order to be able to make money, to be able to afford eventually to put himself through college. His brother, on the other hand, was a very different kettle of fish. Tyrone was determined that he should not have a life of poverty, but rather of affluence. But he chose a very different path. And by the time he'd reached the age of 18, he had been arrested for 5 different burglaries that had taken place. And he was quite brazen in his approach towards making money and towards a life of crime. 2 brothers with the same goal, from the same family, the same upbringing, and yet they turned out very, very different. Now let's return to Abraham. When the angel that came to destroy Sodom went to Sodom, the people there could be forgiven for making the claim that we are completely innocent, or we're certainly not deserving of being destroyed and being killed. After all, we are victims of circumstance. We grew up in a deprived, violent, immoral, decadent society and homes, and therefore we don't know any better. We can't be expected to be anything more than we are, and therefore you can't destroy our city. We're not really guilty. What would be the response of the angel? Quite simply, he would have said to them, I have just come from the home of Abraham, somebody who, like yourselves, grew up in a very, very deprived home, a home that was immoral, a home that was pagan, that was full of pagan practices and deities, and he didn't know right from wrong as a child. But he was somebody who was able to make his own life, to make his own decisions, and to take responsibility for himself and for the decisions and choices that he would make in the future. And therefore, it's true, you didn't have in Sodom the great options and opportunities that others may have had, but you could have chosen a different life. You could have bettered yourselves in the same way that Abraham did. And therefore, Abraham, in fact, is an indictment. And that is why the angel had to go past the home of Abraham to see the difference, to see what could have been. So often in life, we find society and individuals that play the blame game, that refuse to take responsibility for who they are and what they can be, instead blaming others, being victims of circumstance. But that's not what it means to be a Jew and to be a descendant of Abraham. To be a descendant of Abraham means to choose a different path, to be an iconoclast, somebody who can make decisions and take responsibility for themselves and for those around them. As we say, Hillel used to say, we say in Ethics of the Fathers, if I am not for myself, then what am I? And if I am only but for myself, then what am I? And if not now, then when? Now is the time for us to be able to consider the life that we have and to perhaps choose and make the right decisions to lead a more fulfilling, meaningful life for ourselves and for our family and community. Wishing you all Shabbat Shalom.